All right, I hate doing it. You love watching it. It's time to update the top 25. Now, it's been a couple of weeks since I updated my top 25 because of the hurricane and me being without power and internet. So normally I'll put up like my previous top 25 so you can see what the changes were. But we've had 3 Saturdays worth of games since I did my last top 25. So there's really no point in doing that because obviously there's been a ton of changes. I mean, a lot of the top 10 has lost since the last time I updated my top 25, which is 3 weeks ago. Georgia's lost, Bama's lost, Tennessee's lost. Now Ohio State is lost, Missouri lost, blah, 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 on and down the list. So I'm not even going to do that. We're just going to jump right into it and start with the We'll just go with this week's top 25. There it is right there. All right, now my top 25, as always, is a combination of where I think teams should be ranked versus where I think they deserve to be ranked. So their record, if they have a loss, who did they lose to? How much did they lose by? If we have teams with similar records, does one team have a better win than the other? That kind of thing. And I kind of split the difference between where I think they should be ranked versus where I think they deserved. Should is like opinion, eye test, who I think would beat who, that kind of thing. But like, I'll give you an example. I think Miami would probably beat Penn State right now if they played on a neutral field. I think Georgia would probably beat Penn State, Bama, whatever. But that's 100% pure opinion. It's nothing but my opinion. And while that does factor into my rankings, I really try not to make my rankings based solely on my opinion. So in the case of Miami and Penn State, right, I've seen Miami, I hate to use the word luck in college football because every team kind of has the same opportunity to get lucky. And, luck is kind of a combination of being prepared plus an opportunity. And so we can say what we want about the officiating or the calls or Miami's opponents or whatever we want with their last 2 games. They were off this previous week. But, the Virginia Tech game and then the Cal game, wild endings, they did win the game. Right. Same with Penn State. Penn State is undefeated. I think Penn State has a better win on the road at Southern Cal than probably any win Miami has had. I mean, Virginia Tech, Cal, Florida. Now, Miami has looked dominant at times, and the last 2 games, they've looked beatable, but they won the games. So I have Penn State ahead of Miami because resume-wise, I think Penn State's resume is a little bit better than Miami's. It doesn't necessarily mean that I think Penn State's a better team than Miami, and I'm not going to go on and on with every team in this top 25 about that. I'm using the Miami-Penn State thing as kind of an example of how I rank teams. But let's start with number 1. It's Texas. I don't know if Texas has the best win of the season. Obviously, Oregon beating Ohio State this past weekend was very impressive. What Texas does have over Oregon is that they have not struggled at all against anybody. It's hard to even find one quarter of Texas football this season where they didn't look dominant. I think they were up 3-0 maybe at the end of the first quarter against Oklahoma. So maybe you point to that. I'm not sure. I mean, I still think Oklahoma's got a pretty good defense. Their offense is obviously non-existent. But Texas destroyed them. I mean, they beat them 34-3. The game was never really in doubt. I mean, forget the score being 3-0. If you were watching the first quarter, it was clear right away who the better team was and who was going to win. It was just obvious. And that's been the case with Texas week in and week out. They also have a win on the road at Michigan. Now, Michigan's not very good. You can see I don't even have them ranked anymore. I think the AP has them 22 or 23 or something. I've got Michigan unranked. But again, it's not like they went on the road to Michigan and won by 3 points or 6 points or 7 points, right? I mean, they destroyed them. Again, that game was over. Like, it just wasn't it wasn't a close game at all. So I've got Texas over Oregon only for that reason. I don't know who would win, to be honest. If really the top 3 teams here, I think right now look to be separate from everyone else. If I'm being honest, I think it would be ridiculous to rank Ohio State ahead of Oregon right now, 2 days after we saw Oregon beat Ohio State. But again, that was a 1-point win for Oregon at home. home field is usually worth 2 or 3 points. I mean, if Oregon and Ohio State were playing on a neutral field next week, I don't do Vegas numbers for a living, but I wouldn't be shocked if Ohio State was a small favorite over Oregon on a neutral field, considering Oregon beat them by 1 at home. I mean, I don't know. But I can't obviously have Ohio State ahead of Oregon. This wouldn't make any sense. So I've got Texas 1, Oregon 2, Ohio State 3. I'm not going to punish Ohio State for going on the road against the team I have ranked 2 and losing by 1 and having a chance to win at the very end. I don't. I can't really punish them for that. I was fully prepared to laugh at one of these 2 teams, whoever lost. But I thought it was a pretty good game. My criticism of Ohio State would probably be the running game. I don't really know why they didn't run the ball in the second half. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there was some sort of coaching decision or something that went into that, but I don't know what it is. But they seemed to run the ball well in the first half, but in the second half, I don't even think they had 20 yards rushing, Ohio State. So a little bit of the kind of soft thing that people have been talking about with Ohio State. I mean, I don't know, but I've got Texas 1, Oregon 2, Ohio State 3. Texas, of course, hosts Georgia this week. So a big game for Texas. This will be the best team Texas has played so far. Texas is favored in that game. It's a home game for Texas. Oregon, who, of course, got the win against Ohio State, has to go on the road to Purdue this week, one of the worst teams in the country. And Ohio State is on a bye week. So that's it for 1, 2, and 3. Penn State at 4. They came back from 14 points down at halftime to get a win against Southern Cal this past weekend on the road in Los Angeles, 33-30. I think was the final score of that game in overtime. Lincoln Riley and Southern Cal completely screwed that thing up at the end. They got the ball back with 2 minutes to go and didn't even try to get in field goal range. It was one of the saddest things I've seen. The game was tied at 30. They get the ball back. They've got timeouts and 2 minutes on the clock. They ran 5 plays and didn't even call any timeouts. I've never seen a team get the ball back like that and play for overtime with 2 minutes to go. Maybe you get the ball back with 30 seconds or something, and you're thinking, we can't just drop back and sling it here. We've only got 30 seconds. What if we throw an interception and they return it and then the game's over? There's no time left. But with 2 minutes to go, the fact that you don't even try to go down and win the game in regulation, you kind of deserve to lose in overtime, and they did. Not an overly impressive win for Penn State because I don't think Southern Cal is very good. You can see I don't have them ranked either. But again, Penn State's undefeated. They win against Southern Cal, a win against West Virginia, a couple of other dominating wins. Doesn't mean I think Penn State is better than the teams behind them. Miami, Bama, Georgia, Clemson, Iowa State, BYU, LSU, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Tennessee, Boise State. I think anybody in the top 15 could potentially beat Penn State. If I'm being honest, I'm not saying I would pick them to beat Penn State, but I don't see anybody in the top 15 that I look at matched up against Penn State and I go, well, that team's got no chance against Penn State. Any of this top 15, I think, has a chance against Penn State, but they're undefeated halfway through the season. A couple of good wins, not great wins, but good wins. I've got them at 4. Got Miami at 5. Again, a couple of head-scratching games, way too close for comfort there. And, you can make the argument they probably should have lost one, maybe even both of those games. Some questionable officiating things at the end. But again, there's questionable officiating things in every single game. We just focus on the close games that prevent an upset. When a bad call prevents an upset from happening, that's what we focus on. Oh, the officials are doing this, the officials are doing that. The officials screw things up dozens of times a game. I mean, I've made, I don't know how many videos about how bad college football officiating is, because you got these guys that are teaching, middle school social studies Monday through Friday, and then flying out and refereeing the biggest games of the week on Saturday. It makes no sense at all. And then back to the middle school on Monday. We need full-time officials. But anyway, so I've got Miami at 5. They were on a bye week. They play on the road at Louisville. Louisville, not a great team, but I think they're potentially better than Cal and Virginia Tech, who are the two teams that Miami has struggled with the last couple of weeks, and this one's on the road. So we'll see what happens. The last two, well, Virginia Tech was at home. The Cal game was a road game for Miami. Now they get the bye week and now travel to Louisville. We'll see what they can do. I've got Alabama at 6, 1 spot ahead of Georgia. I think the AP poll has flip-flopped this. I think the AP poll might have Georgia ahead of Bama. And I guess I get it if you're looking at just the losses, right? They got the same record. Who's got the worst loss? Well, Bama lost to Vandy. Georgia lost to Bama. So Georgia's loss is a better loss than Bama's. But didn't we watch these two teams play 3 weeks ago? And Bama beat them. Now, I know it ended up being close in the end, but Bama destroyed Georgia in the first half of that game. Now, Bama has looked miserable since then. I get it. They were terrible in the second half against Georgia. They were terrible for 4 quarters against Vandy, and they were terrible for 4 quarters against South Carolina. But they got the wins, but it's hard for me to rank 2 teams who have the same record and one team beat the other. It would be hard for me to move Georgia ahead of Bama right now unless Bama loses another game, let's be honest with you. Bama gets the close win against South Carolina this past weekend, had to dodge the onside kick at the end, which South Carolina recovered, but were unable to turn it into anything, and Alabama gets a 2-point win at home against South Carolina. Georgia, too close for comfort this week against Mississippi State. Now, the game was never in doubt. There was never a point in the game where you thought Georgia might lose, but Mississippi State is clearly the worst team in the SEC. I don't think there's any debate, right? We've all seen what Vandy has done. Arkansas is clearly better, I think, than Mississippi State. Florida, it blew Mississippi State out in Starkville. Georgia defensively in the second half of that game against Mississippi State was an absolute mess. I mean, they gave up over 300 yards passing to Mississippi State's backup quarterback. It just wasn't good. Now, offensively, they put up a lot of points, 41. Carson Beck, 300 and something yards, but he had 2 interceptions. One was a tip ball at the line of scrimmage, so maybe you give him a pass on that one, but the other one was real bad in the end zone. Cost Georgia 7 points. Mississippi State then gets the ball, goes right down the field and scores. So a 14-point swing there in the third quarter. Georgia was up 27-10 when Carson Beck threw that interception in the end zone. If Georgia scores there, it's 34-10 and the game's over halfway through the third quarter. Instead, Beck throws the interception. Mississippi State goes down the field and scores. So instead of 34-10, it's now 27-17, and the game pretty much stayed at 10 points after that. Georgia scored, Mississippi State scored, Georgia scored, Mississippi State scored, Georgia stayed at 10 points. Georgia gets to win 41-31. They, of course, have to go on the road to play Texas this week. They're an underdog, and I would be shocked if there's very many people picking Georgia to win that game on the road in Austin. I've got Clemson at 8. If you pretend week 1 didn't happen, it's hard to find a team that's looked better than Clemson week 2 through week now. Not only has Clemson won every game since then, they have blown out and destroyed every single team they've played with them, covering the spread every single week. They look like a different team than the one Georgia played in week 1. I'm going to be honest. Y'all know I'm a Georgia fan. I don't try to hide it. If Georgia and Clemson were playing next weekend, I don't know how Georgia wins that game the way Georgia's playing right now. So I don't know what happened week 1. Obviously, I don't know if Georgia played their best game in week 1 and has been sliding downhill since. I don't know if Clemson just never got off the bus in week 1 and has been getting better since. Or maybe there's just that big of a disparity between the top of the ACC and, number 3 or 4 in the SEC. I honestly don't know. But if you've watched Clemson play the last 5 weeks since that Georgia game, 6 weeks since that Georgia game, they look dominant on both sides of the ball. I've got them at number 8. I've got Iowa State at 9. This is kind of where it started to get difficult for me here. I really didn't have a problem ranking 1 through 8. Not that I think this is the gospel and any other 1 through 8 is wrong. But I do think these are the 8 teams. Those are the 8 teams that should be in everyone's top 8, I think. Again, doesn't mean I'm right, but I didn't have any problem trying to figure out which teams are going in the top 8. Maybe the order you change a little bit, but Iowa State at 9. I have no idea how good Iowa State is. I'll just be honest with you. I don't know. But again, we are halfway through the season, and they're an undefeated Power 5 team. Now, so is Pitt, and I've got them at 17. So don't ask me, how do I explain that? I think Iowa State's better than Pitt. I really don't know. It starts to get hard for me here. BYU, another one, they're undefeated. BYU and Iowa State are both in the Big 12. They're the only 2 undefeated teams left in the Big 12. Are they going to be the ones that end up at the end playing for the Big 12 title? I don't know. I still think Kansas State's got a chance to get there. Now, they got blown out by BYU, so they're all the way down at 18, even though they beat Colorado this past weekend. But I've got Iowa State and BYU in my top 10. If nothing else, this kind of balances out my top 10 between the 4 major conferences. So did that play a role in why I put them there? Not really, but just kind of turns out that way. So you got, as far as the SEC, what do you got? You got 1 SEC team in the top 5. Yeah, Texas at number 1. You've got 2 SEC teams, 6 through 10, Georgia and Bama. As far as the Big 10 goes, I've got the Big 10 at 2, 3, and 4. I've got the ACC at 5 and 8, and I've got the Big 12 at 9 and 10. So I don't know. LSU at 11. LSU and Texas A&M, who I have at 13, are a little strange. Oh, Iowa State. Don't let me forget. Iowa State beat West Virginia this past weekend, 28-16. They host Central Florida this coming week. Central Florida, not a very good team. Iowa State probably going to remain undefeated. As far as BYU goes, they continue to blow out every single team they play. They beat Arizona this past week, 41-19. They play Oklahoma State this coming weekend. One of the most disappointing teams in the Power Four. Definitely the most disappointing team. Them or Utah in the Big 12. Oklahoma State and Utah have just disappeared for all intents and purposes. So, BYU will be favored. Iowa State will be favored. We'll see if they can remain undefeated after this week. I've got LSU at 11. Them, Notre Dame, Texas A&M. Should be pretty obvious why I've got Notre Dame one spot ahead of Texas A&M. Just like with the Georgia-Bama argument, right? I know Notre Dame's got a terrible loss to Northern Illinois, embarrassing loss, a loss that I think is going to keep them out of the playoffs, even if they go 11-1. But in terms of this ranking, right, I can't put Texas A&M ahead of them. I can't. They played, and Notre Dame won the game at College Station. And they each have one loss. They've got the same record. They played head-to-head. So there's just no way I'm putting Texas A&M ahead of Notre Dame right now. Texas A&M had a good win. They destroyed Missouri a couple of weeks ago, who previously to that had been undefeated. Some close calls, but they were undefeated. Texas A&M took care of that, beat them without any problem at all. Notre Dame, since the Northern Illinois game, has looked a lot better. And LSU and Texas A&M in particular, let's talk about them for a second. Both of these teams lost in week 1. LSU lost to Southern Cal at a neutral site game in Vegas. Texas A&M lost at home to Notre Dame, right? And most of us just kind of forgot about LSU and Texas A&M after that, if we're being honest. We kind of wrote them off a little bit, I think. I did. I not that I didn't pay any attention to them at all, but in terms of like best teams in the country or playoff predictions or conference titles or whatever, I kind of just put them on the back burner. And now here we are halfway through the season, and quietly neither one of them has lost another game. They're both sitting there at whatever they are, 5-1 or 6-1, whatever it is. LSU, I think, is 5-1. I think they're both 5-1, actually. I know they just have the one loss. I think they're both 5-1. LSU with a big win this weekend at home against Ole Miss. Ole Miss is on a slide. They've lost 2 of their last 3 games. And it's the Kentucky loss that, of course, is going to end up biting Ole Miss. I mean, I still think to get into the playoffs, you're looking at 2 losses or less. I don't think right now it's setting up for any 3-loss teams to get in, although it's possible if we have Armageddon here over the last 6 or 7 weeks of the season. So when you look at Ole Miss losing to LSU like that, that's their second loss halfway through the season. It's hard to imagine Ole Miss running the table the rest of the way. They still have to play Georgia. They've got a couple of tough games left, actually. It's just hard for me to imagine Ole Miss running the table. So they likely have played themselves out of the playoffs already, which is bad news for them. Could end up being great news for Florida, though, who has had their eye on Lane Kiffin for a while. We'll see what develops with that over the next few weeks. But LSU did get the win, remain with just the one loss. I've got them up to number 11 this week. They play on the road at Arkansas, who has already beat one top 15 team, Tennessee. They're going to look to do it again at home again, this time against LSU. Arkansas, I believe, is coming off a bye week, too. So a kind of an extra week to heal up and get ready for LSU. Could be a really good game, one to keep an eye on for this weekend. Notre Dame, you see I've got there at 12. They destroyed Stanford 49-7. They play Georgia Tech this week. Could be an interesting game. We'll see. They get them at home. Notre Dame does. And Notre Dame has looked better than Georgia Tech, no question about it. Georgia Tech beat North Carolina this past weekend, but not all that impressively. One score, I believe it was. So Notre Dame will be a favorite in that game, but we'll see what they can do with Georgia Tech. And then Texas A&M, of course, got the big win against Missouri a couple of weeks ago, blew them out. Again, another game that was over 20 minutes into the game. They were on a bye week this past week. They play on the road at Mississippi State, the worst team in the SEC, so they're likely to win again. Tennessee, I've got them down at 14. I had Tennessee in my top 5. I was a buyer on Tennessee, so I don't want to hear any of the Uncle Lou just hates Tennessee and all that. I don't want to hear any of that. I predicted Tennessee to make the playoffs all off season long. And the team that I've watched play the last 2 or 3 weeks is not getting there. The loss to Arkansas was bad. The loss to Arkansas, similar to Ole Miss's loss to Kentucky, could be what ends up keeping Tennessee out of the playoffs. They're another team that they only got one loss, and I think they could even get in with 2 losses. But you just look at their schedule, And there really aren't any gimmies on there. The way they played against Arkansas on a loss, the way they played this past week against Florida gave them that game on a silver platter. Florida had 5 trips to the red zone in the first half and came away with 3 points. If it were not for the total and just utter ineptitude of Billy Napier, Tennessee probably loses that game by 2 touchdowns, and that is bad at home for Tennessee. Tennessee is supposed to be really good at home and sort of have the struggles on the road, which you can you chalk to the Arkansas loss up to that. Well, here's the Josh Heupel having trouble on the road thing again. They came back home and laid a complete egg offensively. Outside of Dylan Sampson, it's hard to find anything that's working right now for Tennessee offensively. I do like Dylan Sampson at running back, but they have been extremely disappointing the last couple of weeks. To me, I've got them down at 14. They host Alabama this weekend. So if they want to move back up into the top 10, they're going to have to win that game. It's a home game. Alabama appears to be sliding downhill in a similar fashion to Tennessee the last couple of weeks. This is sort of a which team can get right type of game here. It's going to be a good one. I can't wait to watch it. In Knoxville, Tennessee takes on Alabama. I've got Tennessee at 14. Boise State, I've got at 15, and right now it looks like they're headed to the playoffs. You know, one group of 5 teams guaranteed to get in, the highest-ranked group of 5 conference champion. Boise State has a loss, but it's to Oregon, and that loss is looking better and better with every single week that goes by. Oregon did Boise State a huge favor this weekend by beating Ohio State. That boosts Boise State's resume immensely. Boise State only lost by 10 to Oregon. It's not like they got blown out. And they've got one of the best player, if not the best player in the country, in Ashton Gentry. That running back is unbelievable. He's over 1,000 yards halfway through the season. Multiple games of over 200 yards. Multiple games where he averages between 10 and 20 yards a carry. The guy looks like a video game character. If he doesn't at least go to New York for the Heisman, the system is broken. Now, I'll have to believe it to see it in terms of a group of 5 player actually winning the Heisman. But if he doesn't at least get an invite to New York, the system is broken. But I've got Boise State at 15. I don't know where the AP has them. Probably somewhere around there would be my guess. They beat Hawaii 28-7 this past weekend. They're on a bye week, so no chance to impress anybody this week. But it doesn't really matter where we have them ranked, honestly. The playoff committee rankings that start in November are the only ones that matter. And the highest ranked group of 5 conference champion, whether they're ranked 5th or 25th, the highest ranked group of 5 conference champion is getting in. A couple of other group of 5 teams in my rankings this week that we'll get to in a second, but they're on a bye week this week. Boise State at 15. Indiana at 16. This is another team. Now, I actually have been paying some attention to Indiana this year. So I've watched more Indiana than I have Iowa State, for example, which I admit I don't know that much about. I've watched a lot of Indiana play. I like the coaching staff has done a great job there, I think. Brand new there, first year for them. And not only are they winning, they're blowing out a lot of the teams they played. And the reason I have paid more attention to Indiana than Iowa State, I've bet on Indiana almost every single week this season because they're just a cover machine. They keep covering week after week after week after week after week. They were off this past week. They played Nebraska this week, probably their toughest opponent of the year so far. And Nebraska seems like they really need a win. We'll see if they can get one. It would be a good win for Nebraska, or we'll see if Indiana can remain undefeated, but I've got them at 16. And I kind of put Pitt at 17 just because they're the other undefeated Power 5 opponent that I don't think Indiana or Pitt is a top 10 team. I mean, I'll just admit it. I don't. So like I said, it's impossible for me to remove all of my opinion from the top 25. So I try to use a combination of my opinion, where I think a team should be ranked versus deserve. Well, Indiana and Pitt are halfway through the season and they're undefeated. So they, from a resume standpoint, they deserve to be ranked. So I've got them ranked. Maybe not as high as you think they should be, but if they keep winning, they're going to move up by default, so it doesn't really matter. I've got them at 16 and 17. Pitt won again. They beat Cal 17-15. They're on a bye week this coming week. Kansas State, I've got at 18. I had Kansas State hovering around the top 10 a few weeks ago, and then they got absolutely destroyed by BYU. I don't remember the score of that game, but it wasn't even close. BYU beat them by 3 or 4 touchdowns. But that's their only loss of the season. I really like their running game. The combination of Giddens and Stewart at running back is one of the best running back combinations in the country, underrated too. And I like their quarterback, Avery Johnson, and he adds to the running game too for Kansas State. They beat Colorado this past weekend. It was a great game. It was the late game. It didn't come on until 10:30, so I don't know how many of you stayed up and watched it, but Kansas State had the lead late in the game. They scored to take the lead with a couple of minutes to go. Colorado got the ball back with a chance to go down and try to win it themselves. Shedeur ends up throwing an interception late in the game. Game over. Game over for Colorado. Kansas State wins. So they still just have the one loss. Let's see, who do they play next? They play at West Virginia, a team that lost this past weekend to West Virginia lost to Iowa State, right? 28-16 or something like that. Anyway, I've got Kansas State at 18. SMU, I've got at 19. SMU could be a fly in the ointment here in the ACC. Now, SMU has a loss, but it's not a conference loss. They lost a game at the beginning of the season for no reason, didn't they? So they're sitting there at 5-1. They didn't play this past week. They play on the road at Stanford this coming week. Should be a win for SMU. And check out their schedule. There's not a lot of hurdles left there. They beat Louisville a couple of weeks ago. I think everybody kind of agrees that Miami and Clemson look like the two best teams in the ACC. Neither one of them have an ACC loss, but SMU, they're keep an eye on SMU is all I'm saying. If somebody besides Miami or Clemson is going to find their way into the ACC title game, it looks like SMU would be that team. We'll see. They didn't play this week, play at Stanford this week. I've got them at 19. Army and Navy at 20 and 21, both undefeated halfway through the season. I haven't watched a lot of Army and Navy play. I'm not going to lie to you and pretend that I have, but they're undefeated. Army beat UAB 44-10. Navy was off this week. Navy plays Charlotte this coming week. Army plays East Carolina, so likely to remain undefeated, both of these teams here. What I do want to talk about, though, is how these two teams relate to Notre Dame. We make fun of Notre Dame a lot. Kind of in the trash talking community. One of the things you'll say to Notre Dame is, yeah, y'all used to win a bunch of national titles back when you used to beat up on service academies all year long, right? Well, Notre Dame's got the one loss, and they still have to play a couple of these service academies. How funny would it be if what ends up keeping Notre Dame out of the playoffs is not a loss to Northern Illinois, but a loss to a service academy? We'll see. It's going to be a big game later in the year. I can't wait to watch it, but I've got Army at 20 and Navy at 21. No one roots against Army and Navy. They just don't. You know who roots against Army? Navy. That's it. And you know who roots against Navy? Army. That's it. Other than that, everybody roots for both of those teams. I've got Ole Miss at 22. They lost again, this time to LSU at home in overtime. Not good for Ole Miss. I thought about dropping them out, honestly. The loss to Kentucky, I think, was really bad. This just makes it even worse. They lost 29-26. It's their second loss of the season. The AP, I think, has them up around 15 or something somewhere. I disagree. I think they're headed in the wrong direction. You're going to start hearing the Lane Kiffin Florida rumors and that's why they're not playing good, and that's why they this, and that's why they're that. Lane Kiffin's got one foot out the door. Maybe some truth to it. I don't know. But they haven't looked the same the last couple of weeks. They did handle South Carolina last week after that loss to Kentucky. But not a good situation for Ole Miss right now, having those two losses halfway through the season, given the expectations they had heading into the year. Not good at all. They're on a bye week this coming week. I've got Ole Miss at 22. Illinois, I've got at 23. I've watched a couple of Illinois games this year, and they're a good team. They're not great. They're not getting into the top 10. I don't think anybody thinks that they are. And this past weekend really was not good for them, even though they got a win over Purdue. Purdue's a horrible team, one of the worst in the Power Four. And they were way up on Purdue. And Purdue scored, 30 points in the second half or something? Almost came back and won that thing. Final score was 50-49. You do not see a lot of games in the Big Ten like that. This was like a Big 12 game from 7-8 years ago. When everybody used to play those games in the 40s and 50s, those track meet games. It was wild to see that between Purdue and Illinois. Especially, Illinois has been a team that's been kind of known for their defense over the last couple of years. It was just a weird game, but they hung on and got the win. They're sitting at 5-1, just one loss. They play Michigan this coming week at home, and I think that'll be a good game. I've got Michigan unranked, but if I were to do a top 30, Michigan would probably be somewhere 26-30. I don't think they're a terrible team. They're just, the quarterback and the offense is a mess, and the running game hasn't been what I thought it would be. But I think this will be a good game this week for Illinois at home against Michigan. I've got Illinois at 23. And then I round out the top 25 with Missouri and Vanderbilt. I don't get look, I'll be honest with you. There's 4 or 5 other teams I thought about putting at 25, and I probably should have. But they're all teams that have been in my top 25 before and will likely be in there again sooner rather than later. Whereas with Vandy, you don't get that many opportunities to put Vandy in your top 25, so I decided to just go ahead and do it, really just for the hell of it. And Vandy has been a good story this year. You know, when they beat Virginia Tech back in week 1, the story was not, oh my God, Vanderbilt beat Virginia Tech. The story was, well, guess Virginia Tech's not any good. We hyped them up in the offseason for no reason. Now they can't even beat Vandy. Well, it turns out Vandy is not the Vandy we've been used to seeing over the last 2 or 3 years. They got that win over Alabama a couple of weeks ago, and it was just completely unbelievable. I mean, it was a shock to the system to see Vanderbilt beat that Alabama team, who you have to remember had beat Georgia the week before. Well, then, and I was guilty of this, last week I said, look, it's a great win for Vandy. Let's not get carried away here. They just got their biggest win in program history. Now they got to go on the road and play Kentucky. This is a classic letdown spot, even for a good team. There's no way I'm not taking Vandy in that game. Well, Vandy went out and beat Kentucky on the road in Lexington, scored more points against Kentucky than Georgia did a few weeks ago. They beat them, 20-13? So not a blowout, not some sort of offensive explosion. And this quarterback, Pavia, is becoming one of the most popular players in all of college football. No one knew who he was 6 weeks ago. He was a transfer quarterback from New Mexico who beat Auburn. That's all anybody knew about him, I think. But he's become one of the best stories in college football. People love watching him play. People love talking about him. He's a good story. People are rooting for him. Again, Vanderbilt's not a team really that has a bunch of haters. There's not a lot of people sitting around rooting or hoping for Vanderbilt to lose every week, right? It just doesn't happen. So if they happen to get good and win a few games, it becomes a good story. It's similar to Kansas a couple of years ago or Duke a couple of years ago when they go on a run. You don't get to see it very often. So when you see it, you don't hate on it, right? Good for Vandy. Now, will they keep it up? I don't know. We'll see. They've got some tough games left down the stretch, but 2 big wins in a row for Vandy over Alabama and now Kentucky on the road. I decided to put them at 25. There you go. That is this week's Uncle Lou top 25 rankings. I'll update them every Monday. Make sure you tune in tonight, 10 p.m. for the Lunch Money Show with me and Pigskin Pete. We'll talk about some of the best games of the week. We'll try to look for a way to make some money betting on those games. Best bets, some underdog specials, that kind of thing. Tonight, 10 p.m. right here on this channel, the Lunch Money Show with me and Pigskin Pete. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're new or if you're not subscribed for some reason. I just hit 75,000 subscribers, which is a big deal for me. So let's keep the momentum going. Make sure you subscribe if you're not. Appreciate you watching. Have a great Monday. Enjoy the rest of your week. Have a good morning.